This week, an eating challenge led a TikToker to eat a 5-meter-long tortilla, and afterwards he fainted and was taken to the hospital. In reality, it looks like one big publicity stunt, but it's a good moment to understand the dangers and the strain the body has to endure in competitive eating. But first of all, let's understand how competitive eating even started. There are records from as early as the 18th century of such competitions for entertainment purposes, but the one who brought it to the forefront was Nathan's, the American hot dog company. Since 1916, the company has been holding eating competitions on July 4th, American Independence Day, because hot dogs are a national food there. Over the years, these competitions have evolved and progressed, and today there is actually a league that holds 70 to 80 competitions a year with trophies, prizes, and even live broadcasts. Now, to understand what happens when someone eats enormous amounts, let's first understand the digestive system and how it's connected to the airways. The food enters the mouth where the teeth do the initial processing, and then, with the help of saliva, the food goes down to the throat. There are two pathways, the esophagus and the airways. The food is supposed to pass smoothly into the esophagus, and for that there's the epiglottis, a cartilaginous structure that's meant to cover the airways so that food doesn't enter them. After the food goes down the esophagus, with the help of dedicated muscles, it reaches the stomach. There, it mixes with acids and undergoes an initial digestion process. But when too much food enters, and too quickly, the stomach expands beyond its natural size. After the stomach, the half-digested food reaches the small intestine, where it continues to be digested, and the intestinal system begins to absorb the nutrients from the food. From there, the digested food moves to the large intestine, to the rectum, and is expelled as feces. Now let's talk about the dangers of competitive eating and divide them into short-term and long-term risks. In the short term, the most obvious immediate danger is choking. Eating competitions are based not only on the amount of food, but also on the speed at which it is eaten. And here we have a risk of choking, either from insufficient chewing or from food entering the airways. Yes, there are several documented cases of people who have died in such eating competitions. A good example is Mahdi Nippon, a 20-year-old student who died in 2021 during a hot dog eating contest in Boston. Another important point is that if small food particles enter the airways, they can cause pneumonia, which is a serious condition requiring urgent medical treatment. The second danger that can occur is a tear in the esophagus. The entry of large amounts of food, especially when it is barely chewed, can cause pressure inside the esophagus, and this can lead to tears in the esophageal tissue, which is a very painful condition and requires medical treatment. The third danger is simply mechanical pressure on the stomach. The stomach can hold a certain amount of food, and when you keep pushing more and more into it, this can cause a tear in the stomach wall. In such a situation, half-digested food and stomach acids will leak into the abdominal cavity, and this is a medical condition that requires urgent treatment. A severe infection can occur here. Another important point is that in practice, you can actually faint from this. When you eat a lot of calorie-rich food, this change in blood sugar levels is significant. The body tries to absorb huge amounts of sugar, and as a result, it releases insulin, which lowers blood sugar levels, and this can cause dizziness, headaches, and even fainting. In addition, too much strain on the stomach can trigger a vagal nerve response, which leads to a sharp drop in blood pressure, and here too there's a risk of fainting. Now let's talk about the effects and dangers in the long term. The first risk is damage to blood sugar and insulin levels. In competitive eating, the body experiences sharp spikes in blood sugar, which in turn causes an increase in insulin production, and over time, these spikes can lead to the development of type 2 diabetes. The second risk is actually an increase in blood pressure and other cardiovascular problems. Food high in sodium will naturally raise sodium levels in the blood, which in turn increases blood pressure, thereby raising the risk of heart disease. The third risk is damage to the digestive system, specifically gastroparesis. In such a condition, the stomach chronically slows down its activity, which leads to nausea, vomiting, severe pain, and serious digestive problems over time. The fourth and final risk is an increase in the actual volume of the stomach. Because our stomach is a relatively flexible organ, increased pressure on it over time will cause it to expand and harm the natural feeling of satiety. At the end of the day, eating competitions are cheap and dangerous entertainment. These events put participants at risk both in the short term and the long term because our bodies simply aren't built to handle things like this. Competitive eating can be a game or an amusing challenge, but in the end, it can lead to dangerous medical conditions. And even if it does really well on the TikTok algorithm, that doesn't mean it's something you should try. Take care of yourselves. Good luck.